It's interesting because you recorded something maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But just like I'm listening to it now and I'm going, this is so relevant to my ministry experience. I
love that.
Right now a pastor in ministry leading volunteers, and I'm like, I need this.
I mean, I knew that it was affecting you because you send me texts, but it's actually kind of special that these random stories they're directly affecting you because you're producing it. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Lead Volunteers podcast. I gotta say, we got some exciting announcements that we're gonna make on this particular podcast. I don't want to tell you everything quite yet, you gotta stay tuned, but we are definitely having some upgrades, some changes, all for the positive, and it's going to serve you guys as listeners and the lead ministry ecosystem with all the courses, with the coaching, with the podcast, all of these things that are a palette of resources that are designed to help you succeed in ministry. We've got some great updates today. Well, I got to say, before we go any further, I just want to say how thankful I am, truly, from my heart. I started this thing 4 years ago, this podcast. It's now on YouTube and on all the podcast audio strategies and services. But from my heart, like, this has been so fun. When I knew that I was going to be recording today, I woke up at like 4:45 in the morning and I was just kind of like percolating on what we were going to talk about. So this is fun for me. This is part of my life's calling, and I'm really, really, really honored that any human being would join me on this. It's been fun also to be at a national conference and see people in an elevator or see people in the hall and they stop me and they go, "Hey, you don't know me, but you're making a difference through the podcast." So that has been a very, very, very special thing. Well, one of the exciting announcements, if I could actually have a drum roll. Do I have a drum roll? I don't know. Let's see if I do. How about this? Nope, that's not it. But this is my friend Bill Van Kirk. Bill, you're on the inside, brother.
Yeah.
You're my new partner in this endeavor, and I'm so grateful. And so, Bill, you did a podcast with me a long time ago, so you're to some of the listeners, you're a known entity, but there's a fun story that leads to how we got connected, and you're on here, and now you're doing a lot of great things for me. But the fun thing is that we'll get to in a little bit the fun things that we're going to be up to and the changes that we're going to have, all of which are positive. But I think an important piece is, like, how the heck did we meet? How did this thing even get started? It's kind of a funny story. And so I'm going to have you tell it from your side, and then I'm going to tell it from my side, because my side is an interesting piece. Okay, you go ahead. How in the world did we meet?
Yeah, so one of my major passions, two of them actually, is discipleship or disciple making and podcasting. Love both those things. Okay. And so I was on a podcast and actually co-hosted another podcast with another organization, and we came across this infographic that went viral online. And this infographic was all about, hey, what are the things that actually matter for students and kids continuing on in their faith as they become adults? And so we came across it, and it was from this guy named Josh Denhart. And so, of course, we loved this. It was amazing. It was stuff that we had talked about all the time, like how important it is that parents are intentional to make sure that these elements are in these kids' lives, because we want lasting faith. We don't want to just kind of inoculate kids against Christianity by just giving them a taste of it. We want them to be fully devoted followers of Jesus. Right. And so we wanted to talk about this infographic. And so in this podcast, we called up Josh and we said, "Hey, we love this. Let's do an episode on this." And of course, we went from there, and it was an amazing conversation. So
now let me give you my side of the story as to how we met. So all of a sudden, I literally wake up one day after having posted just a simple image on Facebook, and it was like 11:10 at night. I'm like, I'm just going to put this up because my wife and I are going to be teaching on this. And I wake up the next day, and I've never had anything like this happen in my life. It was being shared on this one person's Facebook thing 96 times. And then this person was sharing it, 49 times. And it was literally exploding. And so then all of a sudden my inbox, unbeknownst to me, all of a sudden, I didn't even know that people were sharing this. And my inbox was like completely stacked with, hey, can I share this? Tell me more about this. Like 99.5% positive. There was only really one person who was, maybe two people who were a little bit of a hater, but you're going to have that on the internets. They're going to have that on the interwebs. But by and large, they were all super positive. But I got a note from the guy that you were doing your podcast with, and he said, hey, this is super cool. I'd love to get on a call. I'm just super intrigued. And so then I think maybe even that very day, I responded super fast to you guys. And we got on just a video thing just like this. And I explained kind of my story. And then, we talked, and I was like, man, there's a lot of alignment with these guys. This is cool. This is fun. And then I got off of that call and then proceeded to spend the rest of my entire week dealing with people who were interested in this infographic. And I was like, what the heck just happened? And so it literally blew up 7 straight days of my life. And my wife laughs at me and totally unintentionally, but it did circle the internets. It did make its way.
Yeah.
So you were like one of 500 people who got a hold of me. And
that's awesome.
It was a completely surreal experience because I've never had anything like that happen, nor did I intend for it to happen, for the love of all that is good. Right. But I'll say this, that you guys, and Jedediah, you guys were the ones that all of a sudden you inspired me, and you were like, hey, this is actually really, really, really cool. We had an extended conversation that really blessed my life. And so we did the podcast with you guys. I think it was probably a great conversation. But then I invited you to come on the podcast with me. And I don't know if you remember or not, but it failed. Like, I had set up a time with you. I got nice times mixed up. We tabled it, and it took a long time. And you were always on my list. So we got together, did a podcast, and then we just kept talking. But at the end of the day, now, not just where did we meet, but where we're going. There's some exciting stuff that we have on the hopper. And so I'm a kind of guy, Bill, who sees exciting people, or who sees people that are doing cool things, and I want to be an immediate friend. I mean, I don't know do you know what the Enneagram is at all, Bill?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So I am a raging 7, wing 8. And so life is a party I'm all in right now. And so with you, I wanted to see where this could go. And there was a transition with my guy, Jeff, who had started the podcast with me and faithfully did it for 3.5 years. And he was transitioning, and it was just going to be, it made a lot more sense to try something out. Now, do you remember, honestly, I don't exactly remember. Did I reach out to you? How did this happen? That I was like, dude, you want to strike this up?
Well, I mean, we had scheduled so I think we've done 2 episodes together before this. And I think when we did the second episode. Oh yeah. On together,
multiplying ministry. It was on multiplying yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. That one will be released, right before this one. So
it hasn't come out yet.
It hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, that shows you. Okay, so for all of the listeners out there, this shows you just about how much I know, right? My responsibility is to be excited and come up with ideas. But Bill, really, you're the back end guy that pulls all of this off. So talk about the tech stuff. I know, I think people kind of appreciate how the sausage is made sometimes.
Yeah. It's actually kind of interesting. I mean, it's my world, so I kind of love this stuff. But so we recorded that second episode, and it just went so well. We connected really well and loved talking together and share the same passions in ministry. So we kind of banked that episode, and then after that we were like, hey, what could we do together? And that's kind of how this all came about. But what's kind of cool about podcasting is we're like, Josh is recording these shows, if you haven't noticed, like all over the country. It's crazy. Like, as I've been going through and producing these, you're like in all these different cities recording podcasts with people, and you have shows that you recorded like months ago, and you're like, this was a great conversation. And they're like, all of them are gold, of course, but they basically, what we do is you bank those up, and then you release them over time, because people can't consume all that content all at once, right? Yes. So you kind of bank them up, and then I produce them. And that's kind of what I'm excited about for the future, is not just us podcasting together, but some of these future conversations that you're going to have, and kind of packaging those things in a new dynamic way. So here's where the sausage is made a little bit. The newest thing right now in kind of like digital ministry, and just like basically in like social media in general, is to take long form pieces of content and extract out of those bite-sized pieces of content, and then to kind of repost those. And so kind of the cool thing that's going to be happening with this podcast is you're going to see a lot more content coming out, and you'll get some of it bite-sized, and then you'll get some of it long form where we dive deeper into things. Yes. And so essentially, we're trying to serve you guys as an audience better. So you'll have more content. It'll basically help you continue to lead in your ministry better, to avoid burnout, to all the things that Josh talks about. You'll have more content in order to keep encouraging you to move forward. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is that I see all of these wonderful things happening online, and I'm like, ooh, that I'd like that. And Bill's like, that's actually pretty simple. I can do that for you. And so, but I do want to show you, I hadn't thought about the mobile nature of this podcast, but I just want to show everybody. I've never shown this before. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to see now this really wonderful looking case. I'm going to try to do this without knocking it over. And inside is, come on, there it is. This is a mobile podcasting setup. And so I'm a systems guy. I create systems. And so there's mics in there, there's headphones, there's, little teeny stands. And so I take this expensive amount of hardware around the country with me, and I'll meet interesting people doing the chemistry show, right? Or I'll meet interesting people at a conference, and I'm talking with them. I'm like, hey, I know this sounds crazy, but could we pause this conversation and give me like 7 minutes to set up this little mobile podcasting thing? Could we talk about this? And they're like, you want me to be on a podcast? Yes. And so then we capture these conversations. And then I remember somebody said, they're like, wow, this is super cool. So like, is this going to be out next week? And I said, actually, it's probably going to be out 8 months from now. And they're like, what are you, and they're like, what are you talking about? And I say, well, I am a systems guy, and I'm literally wing-dinging around the country doing the chemistry show or speaking or some of these different things. And it's just not like, at any given time, I hope to have 6 to 8 months of weekly content already recorded. Most people probably don't realize that, right? Well, the funny thing is, truth be told, Bill, I don't have that much content right now. I think we're getting ready to run out. Am I right?
Yeah, we're good for several more weeks, but
we
need to start banking more. Yes. So I guess you got to go on some trips and record some podcasts. So.
That's it. But the funny thing is that it's fun to capture people who have killer stories, but nobody's broadcasting on a macro level what's happening. I mean, one of my favorite ones that will be coming up soon, and I could get emotional about this. This is just a regular lady who is retired, but she has a passion for cooking. And she started this thing 7.5 years ago with seriously disenfranchised kids. I mean, this is a rough part of the country that has been like waylaid and land blasted from the opioid crisis. And some of these kids' parents have died from overdose. I mean, it's a really sad deal. And so all she does is she said, okay, I'm going to teach these kids how to cook breakfast on a little bit of a bigger scale. And so like 30 kids. And then they have this little ranking system where it's like, no, actually you can't do the eggs yet. You got to learn bacon first. And then, so who cares? But all of a sudden I was like, as I was watching this, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Would you ever want to be on a podcast and share this with the nation? And she was like, absolutely. Now here's the funny thing, Bill. I did that podcast. This is before you and I were really working together a ton. And she showed up with her hair all gussied up and she had her makeup just right. And I was like, it's only an audio podcast. She's like, oh my word, I went to all this work. But now, because of you, we're actually going to have video for every single podcast moving forward, which, that's an important piece to serving people. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And video podcasts are becoming such a big thing right now on YouTube. So many churches, so many organizations are doing that because it's just an additional way to connect with your people. And when you can see something visually as well as hear it, it's awesome. Now, of course, I know hardcore podcast listeners are going to still just listen to the audio, but we reach a new audience on YouTube of people who maybe are not podcast listeners, but they'd love to, get that content via video.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the interesting thing is I'll never forget there was a gal who is kind of a super fan of the podcast. And I don't know how she realized it, but out of nowhere, she got a hold of me and she was like, what in the world? Mind blown. I listened to this podcast and now I'm on YouTube and I see that very person. What has happened? And so, that was cool. And what you're doing, Bill, is you're helping me to make sure that we're taking these great conversations and making sure they're in lots of places and spaces. And so I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. I think it'll grow the network and kind of help push that mission forward. One of the cool things about you traveling to all these places, and you use that example of the lady with the food ministry, is just that, like, just think about the network effect that you have going on with this ministry. It used to be that, like, in order to find like new ministry ideas, like you would talk to like the youth pastor across town or the children's ministry person across town, or maybe once a year you go to a conference. But now we're bringing all of that content to you, and you can just like wake up in your pajamas and click on our YouTube video, and you can like get ministry ideas and be motivated for your ministry areas. And like when you feel like you're stuck or when you're like running out of energy, hey, just go over to our YouTube page and, like let this kind of re-engage you and give you new ideas. So.
And the funny thing is, the thing that does give me goosebumps and could get me emotional is that there are some truly unsung heroes that are doing super creative ministry and making a supreme difference. And the good work that they're doing truly could influence somebody 1,000 miles away. And I get to be a part of that. And what's so funny also is that, at some point in the interview or in the pre-interview, they're like, well, I don't know. I'm just doing me. I'm doing what I think God is calling me to do. And I'm like, but what you're doing is like literally revolutionary, and you don't know it. And so that's been super fun, right?
I've loved those stories, like getting to produce it and listening through your content. I've been really encouraged. Like it's crazy. It's like, well, I'm producing this to, get the job done, but I'm just being like filled up every week as I'm like producing these things. And just, you're right. Those stories of people who are faithfully serving the Lord, they're doing kingdom work and they're making a huge difference, and no one would ever hear their story or be influenced by it unless we can share it. And so it's amazing that we can share it, because that means we can spur other people on to be innovative in their ministry areas as well.
Yeah. And what's crazy for me is that I literally will have recorded something mid-June, some random place in, Ogallala, nowhere, who knowsville. And then you're editing it, and I will have forgotten that episode is up and coming. And then you've edited it and you're like, you'll send me a text. That was absolutely outstanding. And so that's fun for me. And it's fun. I knew that it was affecting you because you'd send me texts, but it's actually kind of special that these random stories they're directly affecting you because you're producing it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool. And I just see how, you may have recorded something. It's interesting because you recorded something maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But just like I'm listening to it now and I'm going, this is so relevant to my ministry experience. I love that. Right now a pastor in ministry leading volunteers. And I'm like, I need this like right now. I need this right now. And of course, it was recorded however long ago, but the Lord is taking these stories and these testimonies and these stories of change, and he's using it in my ministry, in my local church. So it's really kind of neat.
It is cool. And what's fun also is to, sometimes it's not a completely unsung hero. It's somebody that a lot of people know, and we get to hear their unique story about how God led them into ministry. And so it's this kind of weird amalgam. And I remember when I was first starting the podcast, this is just truth about me. I'm not going to do something half-hearted, just not my MO at all. And so it was January of 2019, and I was literally standing in a line at Disney to get into a ride, and it was like whatever obscene, like an hour and whatever 52 minutes to get to this thing. And so then in my mind I thought, man, what about a podcast? Because I had just been at a conference, and I thought, man, what if I did this? And so thought about it, really solidified in my heart that I was going to do this. But here's the funny thing. I took an entire year before I launched it. And here's why. Number one, I have a value called slow to grow. And just take your time. I'm in it for the long haul. I have another value, which is called overwhelmed by excellence. I didn't want to start this thing half-baked. I didn't want to start this thing and have it be just like, kind of fuddy-duddy, da-da. I want it to be absolutely killer. And so I took a course. I spent like $750 in order to take a course about how to do podcasting. Before I launched it, I had, 12 weeks in the can already, ready to roll. I needed to get a little bit of new equipment. So it was a process by which I didn't run into this half-baked. Does that make sense, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you did that, because what you want to do when you're producing something like this and you come up with an idea this way is you want to remove as many obstacles for people as possible. And when you produce something well, that's what you're doing. You're removing obstacles so that it's easy for them to listen. It's easy for them to engage. And so that's really why I'm excited for the future as well, because you and I both have that heart to have that idea of, hey, let's produce the very best possible content so that people who are a part of your ecosystem, Josh, are actually getting just tons of value. And every time they tune in, they're walking away with a new idea or an encouragement or a reminder or just a, hey, keep going. And so that's why I'm really excited for the future as well.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm excited about that you bring to the table is taking little teeny golden nuggets from different podcasts and putting them out on social media in these little bite-sized chunks. And I've seen it before. I mean, most people are kind of like, wow, Josh, you must be so techie. Not true. I actually am about 9.5 thumbs when it comes to technology, and I figure it out, but it's not like it's work for me. It truly is. And so, that this is an easier thing for you. So we want to partner with people in ministry, whether you're, a children's pastor, you're a youth pastor, whether you're the outreach guy. Like, I always wanted to recruit to my weaknesses. Right? I wanted to recruit to, hey, I don't really know how to do this. I'm not as passionate, but I see the end game. And this person is like warm butter to them. And so then for you, Bill, it's like, oh, no, these things, that's just super simple. I do this. And I'm like, wonderful. I have no idea what you just said. Make all that happen, right?
Yeah, that happens over and over again in ministry, doesn't it? But these short form content is kind of taking the world by storm.
So explain what short form content is, because this podcast in its 31-minute entirety, that's a long form.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So
that's
explain that stuff.
So long form would be where you're kind of choosing a topic, or you have a guest on, and you're kind of like going on a deep dive. You're kind of talking about all sorts of things. And it's, people know they're in it for 31 minutes.
Understood.
Short form content is kind of like Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts and even TikTok videos. Those pieces of content have become very popular in the last probably 5 years or so. Mm-hmm. And it's just a way to, like, if your long form content has like 50 truth bombs in it, why does somebody have to watch the entire thing to get one of those truth bombs, right?
That's so good.
So there's all these there's these value pieces that you can kind of split down into smaller pieces, and you deliver those to people. And what it does is it's like, hey, I didn't need a 31-minute video today, but I did need that 1-minute encouragement. I did need that 1-minute idea. I did need, that 1 minute, whatever it is. And you get served that up on the different platforms. And it makes it really shareable. And then also for us, our hope and our prayer is that it continues to build the audience. We want to reach more people with everything that Lead Volunteers and Lead Ministry is doing. We want to reach lots more people. Mm-hmm. And so having these short form pieces of content just make it really easy to kind of capture that audience.
My favorite part about what you said is that, in all seriousness, some of these episodes have like 46 really killer truth bombs, and they're literally that good. And it's just like, nope, you couldn't have said it any better. That person couldn't have said it any better. And it almost, in the 31-minute long form package, that's almost buried. And so what you're doing, Bill, is you're taking your know-how, your knowledge, and you're extracting some of those truth nuggets, and you're saying, hey, like, we polished off this piece of gold, and here's 17 little flakes put together. It's just a teeny bit of gold, and that made one truth bomb. And that's what you're doing. That's what you're bringing to the table that I literally couldn't do. And so I'm excited for more of that to be taking place. And I think people are going to get excited about that.
Yeah. It's like when you go to Sam's Club or Costco.
Oh my word.
They give you a little bite-sized piece of whatever it is at the store. It's like, oh, I've never tried this chicken pesto sandwich, but now you've given me a bite-sized piece. And so then you try it and you're like, oh, that tastes so good. And then of course you go to the little section and you buy the whole package of it because you want to have that same experience at home, but you want to eat a whole meal of it.
Okay, yes. So that is so well put. And by the way, how many people out there actually like time their Costco run where they're like, I know that I'm going to get a meal out of this, and I'm going to hit every one of those places.
It's going to be 20 bites of different dishes.
But the funny thing is that, to take this analogy even further, that's my heart, to be honest with you, is I want people to be fed. I want people to get sustenance and get nurtured. This thing, hey, listen, ministry is not for the faint of heart. And a burnout is truly lurking. I think of burnout as like a character that's in your life story. And it's this dark character. And when burnout appears on the scenes, you as an individual in the story, you don't know that they're there, but you're going to encounter them. And we want to do everything that we possibly can to give you sustenance and food so that you're not famished, and therefore, burnout ensues, and now you're in a pickle and you're in a problem spot. And by the way, this isn't my first rodeo. A lot of the things, and literally the majority of the things that are a part of the lead ministry ecosystem, are all pain points and fails, Bill, that I've had. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to create a system for myself to never experience that again. And I just imagine that the rest of the world could use this as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think there's so many people, if you've been in ministry for any length of time, you know that it's kind of like burnout. If you don't address it ahead of time or prepare for it, it's stalking you. And so you need things like this in your life. You need these little points of encouragement. You need to continue to feed yourself to overflowing. You don't want to be leading on empty. And so that's what this ministry is providing. Yeah.
We get to be a part of that. We get to be literally a piece of healthy caloric intake so that people aren't famished and aren't like their eyes aren't getting sunk in and they're starting to wither, and then burnout just comes in and absolutely waylays them. That's one of my main goals with life, is to make sure burnout doesn't happen. And this is one of the vehicles. Well, Bill, this has been fun, buddy. But I think we need to tell people to stay tuned. There's a lot more that's coming. I mean, should we tell them a few of the things that are coming?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things is that it's good. It's good. And Bill is helping me, right? And he's pushing me. And by the way, those who are listening, if you don't have people who are pushing you and pushing the envelope and making you feel uncomfortable, then I don't think you're around the right people. So for all this time, the last 4 years, this has been the Lead Volunteers podcast, but we are planning to transition the name, because it's more than just leading volunteers, which by the way is a huge piece and will always be a huge piece, but we're ultimately going to change this to the Lead Ministry podcast, because the things that we're talking about in the topics that we're unpacking are far larger than just volunteers. It's volunteers and so Bill, kind of talk to us about that on your side.
Yeah. So, I mean, leading volunteers, I think everyone in ministry is going to deal with that. And that's a topic in ministry that, of course, we'll always be coming back to because of how important it is. But lead ministry is this idea that, hey, there are various aspects of being in ministry that people need help with, and people don't always have the resources to go to. If you don't have another person who you can talk to about this, where do you go to get some of this training? Even when you go to school, often you're not getting some of the nuts and bolts of what it means to lead a ministry. And so where do people go? Well, that's what we're really hoping to be, right? Is with this content, we're hoping to help people in ministry, whatever area that you're leading in, to have these tools to, like Josh says, to avoid burnout, to kind of grow in your areas, to know how to manage different aspects of ministry. And so essentially the vision is bigger than just lead volunteers. It's lead ministry.
Right. It is. And here's just a quick example. Like, what about like increasing your teaching game? And understand, like in a ministry context, sometimes we are the one who's delivering a message, whether it's to kids or you're preaching or whether you're talking to the youth group or whatever. Well, there are factors. And that's why we have lead teaching. And so that's equipping somebody who is a ministry leader to like increase their game, increase their goodness. And so it does go beyond. And I have so many different courses that do go beyond. Here's another one. Learning how to like balance God's sovereignty and my human responsibility, and teaching people to stay in your lane. God's got a job. You've got a job. And understanding the theology behind that, orthodoxy, right, straight thinking, leads to orthopraxy, or straight practice. And so a lot of these concepts, they are in the grander arc right, of how to lead in ministry. And so that's where we're headed. And so I appreciate, Bill, that you're pushing me to not just have it be the Lead Volunteers podcast, but the Lead Ministry podcast. But don't forget, it's going to be a whole bunch about volunteers because it is such an important piece to the story. Lots more coming. We're also talking, Bill, about having you be a featured contributor alongside of me on a podcast, but on a course about how to lead digitally, right? And so that's up and coming, which I'm excited about. And, I just couldn't think of a better guy to help me with this but you. Does that make sense, buddy?
Yeah. No, I'm super excited for that. I think, people will be hearing about those digital pieces, of course, throughout it, but it's an exciting new area of ministry for a lot of people on how you can be effective at, using digital means to help your congregation grow, to disciple them, all sorts of different things. So it's so needed right now.
So in other words, in 2024, we're taking this thing from maybe third gear and we're throwing it into fourth gear or maybe even overdrive. And I'm excited for your gifts, your abilities, and your talents, Bill. I'm excited that some absolutely random infographic that I accidentally posted went obscenely viral, which ended up connecting us, right? We'll trust God in his amazing providence for that one.
Yeah, it's amazing how God works.
Absolutely. Well, gang, this has been good. Bill, thank you. Again, thank you for your work. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for all of the years of just following this random passion about being technologically intelligent and now beautifully merging that to help people grow in Christ. So hats off to you, Bill. You're a good dude. I am literally excited for the future. Well, gang, that does it for today. We're grateful that you have been a part of the Lead Volunteers podcast today, which is soon to become the Lead Ministry podcast. So stay tuned. We got lots of great things in store. If I could ask one small thing at the end of our podcast today, I would love it if you would do us a solid favor. And you may think, it's not that big of a deal. No, truly, it is actually a pretty big deal. If you would go to whatever, if you're listening on Spotify, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, if you're listening on all the other places that we have it, take time, be my friend, right? And just leave a comment about how this has affected your life. You truly have no idea how that helps get this podcast in front of other eyeballs and in front of other earlobes. So we're grateful. This has been fun. We're super thankful. Bill, again, thank you for being a part of the team. Great things are to come. Well, gang, that makes it a wrap for today, and we will catch you on the next one.